Hi, my name is Mike Rada, and my background is 23 years of logistic experience. And in the last 7 years, I am building the wasteless war by preventing waste happen. I have developed industrial upcycling, which is the first systematic waste prevention tool applicable for industries. And industrial upcycling turned in 2015 into Industry 5.0, which I do represent and I am the founder of. So
Okay.
it's the background.
Yeah, but Mike, thank you very much for that. Perhaps if you can give us a description of what Industry 5.0 is all about.
Okay, Industry 5.0 is the first industrial evolution ever led by man. Generally, to imagine, it's not a sales tour for technology, robots, or anything else. It's a global environment which is based on systematic waste prevention. And to understand the waste prevention correctly, I have to say there are four types of waste. One is the physical waste. This is the trash which we throw away. But the second is a social waste. These are people without work, and it's concentrated on a human part of the industry. The third one is urban waste, which are the empty brown fields, unnecessary green fields, and much more. And the last but very important part is the process waste, which is the wasting in processes, and all that together create Industry 5.0, which should be, and it is, the first industry which does not damage the environment, but generally protected by using and utilization of the so-called on-the-ground mines, of something what already exists here, but we do not utilize it properly. That's Industry 5.0 in few sentences only.
Okay, thank you for that. Would you consider Industry 5.0 to be a framework?
Yes, it's open, it's transferable, it can grow or be smaller. So yes, I will call it framework. I never used this word before, but as you say, I think it is a framework.
Yeah, a framework, following my definition, would be a collection of best practices. You mentioned a very important word in your script description, and it was the word open. So when you say open, what does that actually mean?
It means that it's not connected to one concrete process or industry or men or women behind or a function, but generally it's open to all. We started in factories, in one factory, which was a steel factory, and we can transfer the same knowledge into bank, into school, into any environment, because it's created as generally as a nature, it's evolution. So we have to be part of any other industry. We are not individual industry, but we will be part of any other industry. And this makes Industry 5.0 the biggest in the world in just a few years' time.
Would you consider Industry 5.0, your framework, to be open source, very similar to what we find within the software development world?
I think so. I'm not expert in IT or software development, but the last 5 years, which I am already leading this, my Industry 5.0, is that we are adding parts like softwares or applications or knowledge or blockchain or whatever, and we are creating a really very tight environment which is able to solve the issues. So yes, I will say yes, but I'm not expert in IT or software development.
To be honest, Mike, it has less to do with IT, but rather in a mindset. In other words, if we say it belongs to nobody, it belongs to everybody, that it's free to all, that there are certain restrictions. If indeed you make a modification and there's some sort of review process, then that information that's added to your framework is also open to all.
Then exactly. And yes, I say yes, because this is exactly what we are trying to do. And this is one of the reasons. I did not know that it's named so, but this is the reason why I did not register the trade name and trademark for Industry 5.0. It's written already a few years ago. I explain why I didn't, and I use very similar words to what you said right now.
Okay, great. We had a bit of a chat earlier today, and I mentioned to you the rationale. Why I was reaching out to you was more or less tied to the idea of circular economy. And then I found out that actually you are an aficionado of frugal innovation. Following the definition of frugal innovation, avoiding dealing with scarcity and ending waste, that is the focus of what you do.
Exactly. I was very surprised when you told me, and then after that, I go through your website and I read something what I will say exactly the name. I think not only our names make us closer, because Michael seems to be a good name, but generally, yes, of course. But generally, yes, I am very happy that that we speak the same language, and I would like to be part that we merge both activities together really to achieve the highest possible efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like an opportunity or an offer that I cannot refuse. So you can already count me in. Let me give you, because I already tell that I don't know what it sounds like on your end, but it sounds really muffled on my side. I'm not quite sure if I could use this content for an interview, but I think we both know this is not the last time we're going to talk, so I'm not too concerned about it. Let me explain to you how my journey took place and how I came to not only frugal innovation, but how that led me to the circular economy. I read a book maybe about 15 years ago. It was published in 2002, and it was called The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. And it was written by a gentleman by the name of C.K. Prahalad, who was a professor at the University of Michigan. And he was saying that people in emerging countries are not poor. It's just they don't want your products because they're wasteful. And the idea is if we do not take the time to understand what people's needs are, what conditions they need these products for, and what is their price point, then we should not be surprised if nobody needs their products. And so he goes into great length of showing how we can create new and improved models that allow us to actually get to the actual needs of the individuals, coming up with something unique, breaking rules all the time. And for me, it was a piece of freedom. I felt like I was being taken out of the cage, and it allowed me to actually understand there are different ways of doing things. So I continued on this path, understanding that people in emerging countries develop products that we think are inferior, but actually they cover our needs better than we realized. That was step number one. Step number two for me was understanding this concept of minimalism. Minimalism meaning it's our response to having too much of everything. And once we have too much, then it loses value. If we have one, we value it very much. If we have 100, it's just 100 of the same thing. And we can only take on so much at one time. And this is a feeling that I've had for a long time. And I've noticed lately this whole idea of minimalism has taken on a tremendous interest. And then I stumbled across the circular economy, and then I came to the conclusion that actually frugal innovation is the way that we solve the problems for the circular economy.
For me, thank you for the explanation of your journey. for me, the starting point generally was the 22 years in the logistic when I really almost all my time I spent in a factory. So, but I concentrate on the logistic itself, and I have not seen the amount of wasting. But I started new project in 2010. It was aimed to single-use wooden packaging generally, which is just to be. It's 54% of wooden packaging. It's used one and only time, not damaged. 75% of cardboard, yes. But I make the project for returnables, and I found out that the single use are there. And at that time, from that time, it really clicked, and I know there is something wrong. And since then, I start to develop. And then I started my own journey and so on. It's not important. But
oh, it is. I think that's totally fascinating, Michael.
It's written in one of my books. So, it was never published like the others, but everything is online. I'm sharing a lot. But what I would like to say that the issue which I see with the circular economy, when I started in 2013 this journey of wasteless world, I try to find a solution for waste prevention. So I get through all the sources which has been available, found circular economy, cradle to cradle as well. But I found out that it exists for 30 years, but nothing happened. It is there. Then I found out that generally the circular economy, the result of circular economy is the circulation itself. But they are in circle, they cannot move out. I try to speak with the people with Ellen McCarthy Foundation and people in Czech Republic and in other countries. They don't like what I said generally. Of course, I am criticized their work, but I gave them not only the critic, I gave them the solution. Let's prevent waste happen together. A few years ago, I discovered generally that I know that waste prevention is part of circular economy politics, let's call it so. But it's only the word. It's not the real action because there is a lot of waste industry behind circular economy. And the core business of waste industry is not to have waste, but to have more waste. This is why, for example, recycling, in my eyes, it's a lie. Sorry, it's a great idea. The idea at the beginning was a great idea. It's 100% correct. But this idea was taken, screwed, and just now we have more garbage bins outside, which means for us we have more garbage. And in UK only it was 80% increase in 15 years. Every country just show recycled volumes, but in fact, if we speak about waste, waste is equal to recyclable plus not recycled. This makes the total volume, and this number, it's much more higher than it was 15 years ago before the recycling really started. And because I'm a systematic guy, I go deep in the things from the logical point of view, and I discovered this. This is why it make Industry 5.0 separated from the circular economy. This is why I'm explaining that. Generally, I would like to have all these guys on board, but they have to accept there was a mistake which can be corrected, but it's difficult.
I think there are a number of different definitions for the circular economy out there. And if we look at them purely on the butterfly model coming from Ellen MacArthur, I think that has only on the periphery something to do with the economy. When we talk about biological loops and technical loops, which basically Cradle was talking about as well, so there was nothing new there. I think the main part which is missing is the incentive part for people to want to go ahead and participate, which means for me, we need to come up with new ways to bring incentives into the picture. So if indeed you do not come up with an incentive for people to create less waste, then they're going to create less waste. If you come up with an incentive, then they will not create the waste because they see it's in their interest not to create waste. Furthermore, piggybacking on that of what you said, of course, the more possibility to make waste, the more waste you will make. And that follows directly with your analogy, right?
It's exactly as you said. And in many of the projects, I asked the CEO of the factory only one question: do you want to generate waste or profit? And in the last 5 years, nobody answered, let's us generate waste. It's simple. And this is exactly what you said. And we can deliver the same to people, but the people itself, they are very strong in the zero waste, but very few, if you look back, then very few of them are able to bring this back to the factory, to the job they are doing. And this is why I started with the factories, because one factory produces more waste in 1 day than a city in a year. Only nobody speak about. If you look, it's very interesting. If you look at the waste volumes, you have a household waste generally, or how it's called in English, generally the general waste, which you watch. You have the recycled waste, and you have a so-called industrial waste, but at least in Czech Republic and in many countries, under industrial waste, it's understood only pollution and water pollution, so air and water pollution. But you do not see what a truck full of radish, which came back because it was refused by a retailer because it's a little bit too dry. And it came, and the people in a wholesale distribution center, I was there at the moment, they take 20 tons of radish without considering anything, and they throw it away, straight away. There is nothing in between. It goes in a garbage. And I see this same in a car production, everywhere. And that's the way why I am changing the people. I'm showing them the pictures from their own factories, showing and explaining how it can be prevented. And of course, I have 90% of my time, I have a boiler suit on, gloves on, and I work with the people on site. Every 14 days, I'm loading truck full with cable coils with my hands. So 6 tons in 1 hour, I have to load to save the coils from a landfill. But I do it. And this is the way.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. Actually, I think I'm just going to start in the beginning. Let's stay with your last example of the coil. So you've saved the coil. What do you do with it?
The coils go to next cable producer, and he put cables on it. So instead of single use, we will use it twice. But we implement with this new consumer, we implement a returnable system, so he get it and he get it even back. So from single use, we make returnable. And there is a small share which make the coils into tables, chairs, but it's really percentage.
So for me, this is what I would call the circular economy, taking things that would have been thrown away otherwise and allowing people to profit from it.
Exactly. And
okay.
A very important in the point, circular economy try to change the design of the coil. But me, because I know that the change of design costs a lot of money and a lot of time, so I take the existing one and I find the solution for the existing one.
That's great, because that means you are not forcing people to do things that don't actually fit into their plans, but rather you're meshing the various plans and coming up with a system that didn't exist before.
Exactly. And which has the advantage, you don't need a capital investment to do it, and you have the result.
Do you think you act as a middleware, an entity in the middle between various parties?
Yes, it's very important, because there is one big trouble, which I don't know how it came, but generally people are not able to communicate together. So they are speaking about the same thing, but both mean something very different. And thanks to my experience, thanks to the companies, thanks to the ability to speak with the people, I have to stay some time in between to explain it. And yes, sometimes there has to be my company in between, but if the people learn it right, they can do it without. And this is the next advantage. I cannot be in every factory which I improved. I have to hand it over. I have to teach the people from school up. I have to teach them and they can take over. But time to time, they came back to me. Please, we do not understand whether we do it good or bad. Can you help us? And so on. Long-term relationship, truly business relationship is being developed.
Why do you think the people don't understand?
It has something to do with the specialty of the people. So if you will speak as an IT guy, if you will speak with me, with your IT language, I will understand half of what you will say. But if I am not open and I do not say, sorry, I do not understand, you will not know that I do not understand. And I worked for 5 years for a second largest Japanese corporation. And there is, for example, once a very strange thing. The Japanese manager, it was explained to me that the Japanese manager should not ask a question and say, I don't know. And we have a big discussion. I was almost fired because of that. When I said, but if I do not ask, how should I learn? They did not understand it. It was very strange for me. And I was very happy after I left the company that I can say, why do you have to ask 5 times? If you spend your time to put your question right the first time, you don't need the 5 why. But I will never be able to say that within a Japanese corporation because it's almost a law. 5 times why, it's almost glorious in such an environment.
I have to share with you later on an article that I wrote that covered precisely the topic you just discussed, in being the ability to admit that you do not know, which is very, very important. And so that this is music to my ears, Michael, to hear you say that. The communication's one of the issues, clearly, and I agree with you there. I think we have another issue tied to the ability to understand. And the real question that I think that we're all confronted with, regardless of whatever system we come up with, how can we onboard people quickly so that they can not only understand it, but they can master it quicker? And that's taking the experience that you have and being able to put it in some sort of box so that people can take it and at least define what they can do right now and speed up the learning process, because I think part of it is a learning process that has to be part of the model.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I have I am using 2 ways generally. The first way, it's called so-called wake-up calls presentation. This is something when you stay in front of the people and you show them their own factory with different eyes. You deliver very set picture. No matter where I am speaking, whether it's in France, whether it's as senior managers or workers, they are breathless. They told me after, we never considered it so bad. We thought all the time we are fine. So this is one thing. And the second, I have shown you shortly my workplace in the morning. The second solution is let the people do it. I developed so-called 6R methodology. Everybody knows 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle. So-called waste pyramid. It's again a lie. It does not work. I can explain, but not now generally. But the 6R, I took the existing 3Rs, which does not work, and I add 3 more Rs. And this is explanation to your question. The first, it's hard. You have to recognize that something must not become waste. Trust me, it's hard. If you are a worker and you all the time put the things in a garbage, it's hard to recognize that it must not go there. So recognize is the first step of the 6R. The second R, it's reconsider. It's even harder. If you all the time throw away a vinyl record because it was scratched. What to do with it? It's scratched. It will not play. It's a waste. So to reconsider that this must not become waste. It's really, really, really hard. But you can learn it. It's about education and about systematic thinking and innovation thinking. This is something what you can learn. And the third one is the best one. I love it most. Realize. Just do it. What will happen? If you are not successful, there will be waste. Okay, but still, the waste happen 1 month, 1 day later than if you throw it away immediately. But if you succeed, and trust me, you will succeed. If not first time, okay, then the second or 10 times, you will succeed. And if you succeed, you maybe deliver something which will change the world. And that's these 3 R's. If you are successful, you don't need the last 3 R's, reduce, recycle, because you have no waste. And I teach all the time the people, let's do it. Let's take something from our own environment and change it into something which you never expected it can become. I use old methodologies like origami, for example. I work with origami. I use something what already was there, but we forgot that it existed. And I take it out. I teach myself all these methodologies when I can. And I do it myself. I'm not perfect, but it doesn't matter. If you know the wabi-sabi,
I'm not familiar with it.
Wabi-sabi is very interesting. It's a Japanese, let's say, way of thinking, or even philosophy can be. And they say one very interesting thing. Item must not be perfect, be perfect. And that's exactly. And the most valuable items from Japanese history are the broken teacups, which are connected with gold. And these are something what the collectors pay millions of dollars to get something what was broken, but fixed with gold. It has some name, I don't remember, Kitsugi, Katsugi, I don't remember exactly. But this is very interesting. So you see, even wabi-sabi, a century-old or 1,000 years old philosophy that something must not be perfect to be perfect is connected into Industry 5.0. And I say all the time, if you do your work with love, the result will be loved. And this is something what is completely missed in chain production, in 1,000, 1 million pieces, to have all the time the same, completely lost. And this is why the man is in the middle of Industry 5.0, but together with the systematic waste prevention, not man and machine or only man. It will not work. It must be environment. First industrial evolution. I'm not doing revolutions because they get shorter and shorter. Just look at the length of industrial revolutions from 1 to 5, 1 to 4 generally.
What I hear you talking about, Michael, is truly a mindset. We're talking about a mindset here. Either you have the correct mindset to do things in a proper manner, or you don't. And thinking about those 3 R's that you listed, based on your experience, what do people really need to overcome?
The biggest hurdle, generally, these first 2 are very hard. It's because you are used to. So we have something, we are habits. So to overcome a habit, and these are the first 2 R's, it's one of the most difficult parts. Then if you start to realize, then it's like a playing game. You succeed or not, it's fine. But if you succeed, it bursts you with endorphins and you are really happy. I even have to create a way how I am working. Generally, I was for many years, I was a multitasker. It said generally that women are better multitaskers. I am in this case a woman. Generally, I was able, when I learned as a student, I have to have a radio on, read a book, watch a TV when we had a TV, and then I can learn. I need at least 3 or 4 different inputs to learn the one correctly. But around 40s, I started to say, okay, the computers are much more faster and so on. I was not anymore so efficient in the multitasking. And I look again for something which can help me. I didn't find. So I developed a methodology called core task management. And this is something, again, it has a deeper impact, but generally, with a core task management, I am much more efficient and I can achieve much more results than with the multitasking. It's just a slightly different way. And this can be achieved in the realization they came into core task management, they learn how to work with the time because nothing is more valuable than the time and so on. So, but overcome habits. It's one of the most hardest one. But if you wake up the people and they overcome the habit, they are the strongest supporters of anything which will come.
I agree. I think the issue sometimes is being able to make them get to the point that that is where they need to put their focus. Today, we live in a world where the emphasis is continuously on efficiency, whereas the question of whether it is effective or not is never really raised. So I always raise the point, crappy input means crappy output. And it might be efficient. You might work on that process in the middle to make it more efficient. But if you have crappy input, you're still going to get crappy output. You might get a crappy output quicker. And so the real issue is, how do we go ahead and following that of what you said tied to habits, how do we come to the conclusion that if we do not concentrate on being effective, we're never going to make any progress?
I saw many examples. For example, changing of information system in big companies. They do it. They invest millions of dollars without cleaning up the system, the old system. So it's exactly as you said. But how to get them to change it? How to get the mindset change? It's just one thing necessary. Show them what will be the benefit for them, for everyone. Finding the benefits, I call it so, finding the benefits and not understanding under the word a benefit only financial one. There are many. Smokers can smoke much faster and so on. There are so many. I was myself surprised how many benefits people can benefit from generally. But if we find a benefit and we deliver the benefits to people or companies or whomever, they will change. They will change because they will not do it for you. They will not do it for me. They will do it for themselves. And the one who thinks much bigger picture, they will do it for their families, for their countries, for the planet. We have one home. Last we reintroduced a symbol which is called my home. It's a sign of a planet, and there state with big letters, this is my home, and below, what is yours? And this is something that helps us to wake the people, to wake them up.
See, based upon your description right now, that's what the circular economy should be all about. If people do not see the reason to do things and they don't see the incentive, which you described quite well, then they're not going to do it.
That's the point. Unfortunately, if you look, for example, on the protesters in the streets, Fridays for Future, climate, and so on, they are participating in strikes with the result in strikes. They ask others to do something for them to have a better life. But I never saw in any of these strikes board which says what I should do to change the future. There is only change it for us. We would like to live better. And that's wrong. That's the wrong approach. This is why the Fridays for Future can be held forever with no results at the end. And this is why I do not participate in.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to explain it to the people who organize it, of course. But there are many similar examples for organizations which core business, it's not the change itself. It's the time they can live the same way forever because it's a profitable way. It can be big NGOs. There are big names behind. I don't want to name it right now. But there are a lot of, and there must be time when we name it. In my blogs and so on, I name all if it's needed, because we have to name the issue to get rid of it, to correct it. Without naming it, we will not be able and willing to change it.
I'm afraid I have to agree with you again. And in fact, very often we run across structures that are the biggest impediment because it's not in their interest to solve the problem, because if the problem is solved, then they have no reason to be.
This was when I started with my wasteless world journey. I was really in a high position, so I was welcomed by any other big player which I visited and contacted. And at that time, I thought, okay, who would join me on the wasteless world journey of preventing waste happen? It must be the waste industry. So I contacted all the big waste industry companies in the country. I sent them an email, explained them, and asked for a meeting. They welcomed me because they expected some jobs or some work for them, some profit. I explained that I would like to prevent waste happen, and through that action, establish the wasteless world. And you know what? Not a single company joined me. Single waste companies joined me. And for 1 year, I didn't know why. Then I realized that it's simple, as exactly as you said. The core business of a waste industry is to process waste. If there will be no waste, there will be no growing profits, which makes the waste industry third most profitable industry in the world. One interesting issue. 2 years ago, it was the fifth most profitable industry in the world. Today is the third one. It's the crude oil industry, weapons, so war industry, and the third one already is the waste industry. After is the human trafficking, and the last one are drugs. So they are able to skip 2 places, and they are on the third, in an age when millions of dollars are poured into recycling ideas. And no, the result is very opposite than that it's told to everyone. This is why I am staying on my word. My intention is not to be a rich guy. I have only one and only aim. I would like to create a wasteless world. There is nothing in between. And I have nothing. I even lost my family because of this job. But I will go that way. And I believe that with people like you and with people who listen to this conversation of us, I will be able at least to peak in this wasteless world. I will not live in it. That's what I know already. But at least let's have you and me to have a peak in a world which we start to build with our hands.
You mentioned a number of very interesting points. One of them being this idea of power and who has the power in the certain interests that they have. The real question is, how do we go ahead and approach that issue? I heard you talk about awareness, raising awareness, the ability to get started and not expecting perfection, knowing full well taking an agile approach, knowing full well that you need to start before you can learn, before you can make progress. That one was also very clear to me as well. if we say that the powers are not going to roll over and play dead, then who do we need to talk to make progress?
For sure, not waste companies. They do not want, because their core business will be have to completely change. It will exist, a waste industry will exist in a wasteless world, but will never rule and write the laws and legislation anymore. That's one thing. I doubt that the politicians are the right one to speak with as well, because they are influenced too much by money, which came from the industries which have the money, and waste industry is one of them. But what I think, and this is why I concentrated on companies and businesses, this is the right start. Because if we speak together and you say at the end, okay, I would like to be part of Industry 5.0 and from tomorrow I will prevent waste happen. You are one person. But if I change a factory, there are 3,000 people in a factory working. With same speech to them, I change 3,000 people and they deliver this message home. So we have to work with businesses and ask them, really give them the opportunity, the benefit of not generating waste, but profit. And the second stage is the education. From the very early age, the children should not be delivered lies like recycling 3R. I'm sorry, it's a lie, and it's very simple to explain. On just a pack of chips, I can explain how it works. But really to deliver them the right messages. And I see it from the very early age. And it's not a very early age only. Even the seniors are a great group to work with. Nobody speak with them about, and it's wrong. For me, seniors are a much more stronger group, at least in Czech Republic. If you make a speech to them or a presentation to them, they have a lot of questions. Students on universities, they are silent sitting there. But the people who live in Czech Republic the whole life in socialist, in communist times, with fear from speaking and so on, these people are so full with ideas. They are so creative. This is a group which everybody forgot, but for me, it's not a social waste as the legislation says. Rentier, it's a social waste generally. Students are social waste because they have no right to work. No, this is the one of the most powerful most powerful, I don't have the right word, but something which we have. This is the underground mind, which so many overcome, and it's wrong. They are here, they are strong, and they are able to change the world with us because they look for meaning for their lives. I do recommend, I will send you a link. I watched an interview with Carl Gustav Jung in Switzerland, 1959. 1 hour, it's worth watching. And he finished this interview with one sentence, which I put in my work for 7 years already. The people cannot live meaningless life. And I am so happy with the change from being employer and manager and so on. I decided to switch. And just now on my business card, it's only one title, human. And this is the most valuable title I ever had in my business history. I never had a better one.
Very inspiring. Thank you for that. Can you go ahead and list, without naming names, what successes you were able to have, say, for example, going into industry and perhaps influencing a number of people to see things correctly and take this mindset and adopt it to the way that they actually live?
Yes, generally, it is important to say that from 2013, when I started this journey of mine, it was prevented more than 675,000 metric tons of material and products to become waste. So this is a volume which will cover some cities completely. And this is the result of the work. And what do the people do? For example, the people with the cable drums, this is the actually running project. So the people are delivering the cable drums using them. And already we are supporting a workshop which makes out of the same cable drums furniture, garden furniture for schools and kindergartens. I have people which, for example, behind my back, there are vinyl hand-cut records from broken vinyl records. And this guy generally, it's a cook. He's a chief in a restaurant. But he, after visit to my place, which is completely made by my hands, he changed his mindset. He changed completely to zero waste cooking. He prevent waste happen even in the planning stage, because it's the planning, it's not the cooking itself, it's the planning. And it's horrible to know that 75% of global crop is thrown away without being processed. It does not even reach the second stage of production. 75%. And this is what I love. The people come back. And just now I have a student, 2 months ago, students from Design University here in Pilsen city. And he sit in one of the chairs which I made with my hands from the cores of stretch foils generally and cardboard. And his work at the end of the school year, I don't know how it's called in English, but generally they have to do some work. And he make a great design proposal using the same material just to connect it with a steel. And then these people write to me and say, Mr. Rada, we did it. And we started new business. And the factories do the same. I never change a factory that they will change their core business. No. But they change their mindset. And at the end, they don't have the waste. They have something which they can even profit on, and supporting the development from one company. This is why I do companies. Generally, they are part of some bigger picture. And so it's spreading within the corporations and within the supply chains. And that's the way. And this is why I said I like to look back and at my footsteps, and I see only the green ones. I don't see any deep ones in the meaning of only money or oil or whatever. I don't care. But do you know what a feeling it is when you come after 3 years to a factory which you ran for 3 months a project, work there, and the people who are protecting the factory, so standing in the front of the factory, call me by name and say, Mr. Rada, after 3 years, they even don't know the name of the CEO, and say, Mr. Rada, you are here again. Come, I will show you what we have done. Unbelievable.
That's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. It's truly inspiring. Got another question for you, Michel. When you come up with a problem within one company and you know that there needs to be a solution out there, how do you find out what the options are and how do you bring them together?
I was all the time, they call me out-of-box thinker, just now under the carpet looker, but generally I was all the time creative. But the advantage for me, for 30 years, I am networker. So in my networks are thousands of people who are experts in some fields of business. I never grow up from a childhood generally, so I keep in my mind this ability to learn things. If you are an IT expert, I don't want to know what you are doing in detail. but I would like to know what you are doing to know what you are expert in. And this is how I connect these ideas. This is why the part of the IBCSD lab, the International Business Center of Sustainable Development Lab, this is my company, is to establish labs in countries or regions, which will be the brains. There will be all this idea connected. Great will be to use modern technology, IT, blockchains, all what exists, but is not used for that at the moment. And additionally to the labs, to the brains, we need the hands. So the next part, which will be around, will be so-called IBCSD works, where people will realize. And this setup, I have published on the very first day when I started the journey. It's in bad English, in my website. I did not change anything, and I will not change anything, because it's exactly the picture which will help achieve the change. So to answer your question, my advantage is that if I find somewhere something, probably in my brain connects and I have some solution, somebody who has the solution. So I give them a call, invite them to the chair. We sit for 3 or 5 or 5 companies on one table to discuss all the aspects, and we implement it. But this is something which I would like to put in so-called Industry 5.0 vault as a bank treasure, or how to call it. And there will be all this idea, and thanks to IT, we will be able to use it, utilize them, and care that they are not screw up like the recycling and they are not used the wrong way. This will be the function of Industry 5.0 as well.
You mentioned earlier that you gave a speech in France.
Yes.
Maybe you can give me and my listeners an idea of those areas within Europe or perhaps outside of Europe where you're currently involved. You also mentioned you're working for a Japanese company. It would be interesting to find out where your activities have been so far, because I would imagine that a number of our listeners would be keen on latching on.
When we speak about the speech, so I was in France, Latvia, Slovakia. I have a speech in Germany. And this was my direct presence on a conference or event or so, in Czech Republic, of course. But because I cannot be everywhere, and especially with the boom, so I do so-called virtual presence. I am there on my virtual stage generally, and I present exactly the same, with the difference I am not standing in front of the audience, just in front of the camera. And only in this year, it was 27 events in 27 countries. There is no restriction. The last events has been in US, in Indonesia. We are planning right now India. We are planning Australia. I don't care if I can stay here. Of course, it will be much more better if I am there. But especially in the times of coronavirus, I think the travel will reduce radically. But it's fine. We have camera, we have the technology, we can even have something more, which I don't even know, and let's use it to spread it. So if anybody from the people who watch this is almost 53 minutes of a video.
Wow. And we just got started.
Exactly. It must continue. But please contact me, get in touch, just input my name in Google. You will find me, I'm sure. And I can be everywhere. Of course, the biggest advantage or the fastest project, if I can be there. Every project I start, I am going through a factory. I'm making a factory tour, and I walk and would like to see things which even the people don't think. I'm looking at the garbage. I'm looking around the factories. If I can, I go up the ceilings and below the factories, because this is what you have to see. And this is, of course, the most efficient way to approach a factory if you would like to start a project. But if you would like to wake up and you would like to deliver these wake-up calls, it can be done even online. It can be done through workshops. I like the speeches in schools. Next week, I'm again in 2 schools, educating for 1 hour, explaining from 20 minutes time to 2 days. I can speak about the work you mentioned it several times. I have a very, very big scope, and I was in almost all industries, except a few, which I avoid because I do not work to work for them. War industry, I don't want to get in touch. They need it. I don't want it. Alcohol, it's alcohol and drugs. I don't like it. And the waste industry, I would like to change, but they don't like it. So, and of course, very special industry is the nuclear plants and so on. I do not touch them, but I know they will need it as well. But it's so special environment that it will stop my work for a long time, and I don't want it. On one project, I spend maximum 3 months time, not to be blind, professional blind, and to be able, I can do 3 projects simultaneously in 3 factories, but this is the maximum what I can achieve. But if there will be if there will be the people which can learn that, it's not difficult, then we can really change the world and the habits. In 1 year, we can change the world. Coronavirus was able to change the Wuhan air in 1 month, from the most polluted into blue sky, which was there 1 month's time. We can do the same. Just people will do it, not viruses.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly, but I'm very glad you raised the point of Wuhan, because we have to understand, why did Wuhan happen to begin with? I'm not talking about the virus, I'm talking about the CO2. And what does that mean when we do not continue producing those things that cause that type of pollution? And of course, I understand when you're talking about wasteless world, that's exactly what you're referring to. But we're talking about economic models that perpetuate this. So the question I would have to you, how do you approach the subject of economic models in coming up with adequate solutions that are going to last?
One of the common questions, so I am prepared. Generally, Industry 5.0 environment mean less products, smaller production, so not such a big quantity, but at the same time, higher profitability. Because current economical setup, I'm not an economist, but I know people who are really top economists. The current issue with the economy is it's based on quantity. It's not interesting, and the people are not interested what, but how much or how many. And this causes huge overproduction, huge waste at the end, of course, and generally, but not more money in the system. And when we prevent waste happen, we will not have these overproductions. We will not have graveyards full of new cars or planes or whatever. We will not have these. We will produce a product which will be needed. And this will be the change. Generally, Industry 5.0, it should be sustainable on economical and material way. On the economical, we need 5 years to calculate one number. We do not have all industries, but already now it's representative. It's 475 trillions US dollars savings of year if you prevent waste happen. Not war industry included, not oil industry included, not waste industry included. 475 trillion, this is something what even I have to find a name for that. I never saw so many zeros. This is the economical. So why should I print new money if I have the money already? This is the answer of the economy. The answer on the material, we have it. It's in the on-the-ground mines which are already here. Just we do not use it and behave like with waste. We don't care. It's just waste. So this is the next advantage of Industry 5.0. You don't need a capital investment. You have the money already. It's crazy. Me as a non-economist have to develop economical words, and everybody knows ROI, return of investment. But we have to develop zero ROI, which means you don't have to invest and you can generate 50 million in a year. And it's not the end. It's even worse. We have to develop a reverse ROI, which means you invested already a long time ago, you forgot about it, and you have to learn how to use it. It was a reverse ROI, a new name again, one new word, which we have to develop and implement to the factories to explain that they have the money already, just forgot about it.
There's a phrase that's used quite often that I believe it describes that of what you're talking about, and it's called degrowth. And I think it's following the same adage. My argument is that this is all good stuff. I'm in full agreement. But if we're not capable of changing economic models like GDP, which in my mind is the real culprit, all of our efforts are only going to be a Band-Aid on this problem. So the real question is, how do we come up with growth, new ways of measuring growth? And I think that you're on the road. I think you're truly on the road in coming up with new ways of measuring it. Full agreement. But how do we go ahead and what do these models actually look like? How do we go ahead and define growth? Are you saying within Industry 5.0, you have these economic models that actually go ahead and define what growth should be?
I cannot call it economical models. That's,
okay.
As I said, I'm not economist, and I'm already on thin ice on this. But what I know, that when you economists like Mr. Smil, for example, from UK and from Canada and when we sit together, these crazy guys, we will come to the right one. The only issue, I don't say I don't have it. The only issue is I cannot name it in the way how it should be named to be understood by economists, because as I explained before, the common language is the very important part to understand each other. And this is the only thing which I am missing generally. I have it here, but I am not able to name it because the economists will not understand what I am meaning. So it's the best time. The people, we do not have to meet in Davos, going there with our own planes to say we are green. No, we can sit in front of our computers, people who are not going just for money, but who are going for the change itself. And let's discuss, because it exists. I know it. For example, the 6R was very strange how I came to it after 2 years of doing that. Generally, I came to my workplace, and it was like if a striking struck me. I sit on the floor, and I think this was the feeling with when Archimedes came to his idea, when Newton hit the apple on the head. I know not only what was wrong, I know the answer. And I wrote it down and so on. And this is exactly what we need to do now. I would like this video will be reshared, and the people who really are able to speak the right language, that we all sit together, maybe in one room, maybe in one city, maybe just in front of our computers. And we came to this. Because, as I said, we cannot expect the governments to do it. Their core business is to make a policy, not deliver a solution. And especially today, when we go to Wuhan again, Czech Republic, and many other countries, Italy and the other, how the politicians are acting, It's unbelievable and efficient, unprepared, like there was nobody before and nobody expected something can happen. It's really tragic.
Leads me to two more questions. Globalization is one of those things that has both a good side and a bad side. The good side, of course, is this interaction that we have between people that did not exist beforehand. Obviously, the internet playing a very important role. The ability to learn from each other in a quick pace, which means that we have more of a chance of being more transparent in spite of all the power, where the power is to be found. So that's the one part. The bad part we've talked about quite a bit so far. So one of the challenges that I have is actually trying to see how do we come to terms with things like globalization that have both good and bad components?
To be honest, Industry 5.0 is more local. So it works with the global, but it's more, the core is in the local environment. It can be food production. It can be anything generally. We have to break the dependency on just one source. Like China stopped. Great example, China stopped import. They informed 1 month, 1 year, almost not 1 year, but 9 months before that they will stop importing plastic waste. The waste industry did not tell it to the clients. And this is why it rises up in this current situation. But the dependency on one and only source is one of the issues which we have to rise up, discuss. And China is so big, China does not need any other countries to be rich and profitable. They have how many billions of people? They don't need it. We have to support each other. We are living in one home, as I said, and we have to respect it. And we have to go into and to follow one and only aim. This should be agreed by everyone, but not only agreed, we should follow it. And this is that we have only one planet. No matter how fast Elon Musk will send people to Mars, still we have only one planet. Because the 1 million which he would like to send there till 2030 will means that 7.6 billion people still will live on the earth. And this is what is right now the time to do. And, you know, they not only call me visionary, but generally I am, for example, I am blogging every day since 2014. But I am not writing my blog what was, but currently, today in the morning, I finished my blog for the March 20th, 2021. For every single day. It's in Czech, but to write the next day, I have to have the day before. I am really creating, and I do agree that the future we are creating. And I do not predict the future. I make it already. So I am 1 year ahead already. And this is why I can answer these questions. So, because I know what will happen. It's not in detail, but generally, it's exactly, and what is interesting, it's really happening. What I wrote 6 months ago, today it happened. Somehow, I think the time travel is possible. Just what is, from my point of view, not possible is jumping. But you can go step by step. And this is how the future with the hands is made.
You mentioned, thank you for that. You mentioned smaller groups or local things being done locally. How local is local? What is the best sized element for things to work properly in your opinion?
It depends all the time on the segment. So generally, it's not possible to say that 5 people are fine or 1 city it's fine. No, it's not possible to do it this way. It will be too generalized, and this is not correct. it must be all the time set according to the needs. For example, if you speak about the independency or the island energy, so I have only energy in this city and I am not connected to the grid. Up to some level, it's fine, but then can be dangerous. At the same time, and generally, this is a good question because this is one of the issue of generating the waste. The industries do not talk together. The producer of electric car does not speak with the producer of electric bike. They do not cooperate. They use the same wires, same batteries, but they do not talk together. One is playing just for him, the second just for him. And if you look at the moment at the development of the electric car movement, the people say who are behind say only electric cars. This is the biggest nonsense I have ever heard. I am for 30 years in logistics. I do in efficiency. Electric car is great in some way. In a city, fine. When I do not drive more than 30 kilometers, it's fine. Why should I drive from Prague to Moscow? That's nonsense. There can be LNG better, and for some will be better that fuel. It's fine. But the problem is the lobbyism, that they are pushing only for one solution. That's not correct. We have to see the global picture. We have to see the whole picture, and then this is what the logistic help me to see the whole picture. And from that, we can decide whether for this location is just a small size better or whether it should be part of a bigger picture. Because everyone is part of the very big picture.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm thinking more about making an impact on a certain community. So in other words, if I live in a town, maybe the city would be too big. Give you an example. I live in a city of 2 million people. To go ahead and mobilize 2 million people is extremely difficult. I cannot know all 2 million people. I cannot have an effect on 2 million people, but I can affect the area that I live in, the immediate area that I live in. So following that analogy, how does that fall into your model tied to sectors if we're dealing with a certain geographic area?
Good question. And to be honest, I don't know whether I have the right answer at the moment, because I will say for you as a teacher generally, the biggest impact which you will deliver, it's through your students. Because if they change, their family will change. And if their family change, their relatives will see and change. And it will be much more bigger impact than if you will be able to change all the people in your flat, for example, or in your house or in your... So it's all the time we are coming back to the issue of the benefits. What will be the biggest benefit? And this is one of the most difficult questions. What will be the benefit of 10 people, 20 people, 2 million people? Is there anything like that? For everyone, it can be money, but money is generally a limited thing and very short term. What will be the thing that Vienna, everyone would like to have? It's a beautiful city. It has great vineyards. It has not so big pollution, river traffic. I don't know. The answer should come from the city itself. What we need. What will be the benefit for us if we join it? For example, I know one. It will be very interesting to know how much are the costs of waste management of Vienna city. Very simple. Is it 1 million euro per month, 10 million, 100 million? I don't know. It will be a big number. That's what I know for sure.
I can guarantee you it's going to be a big number. I don't know the number myself, but I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. And to piggyback on some of the things that you mentioned, I think our influence is on multiple levels. You came up with an example of where you're giving webinars. and holding virtual talks in multiple countries. And that means that you have influence outside of your own neighborhood. You are going to have an influence somewhere in between the global and your neighborhood. You will have an influence there. Is it going to be the same influence? Maybe yes, maybe no. Probably there's going to be some difference. You mentioned earlier the idea of you wish you can be physically somewhere, but we have to do what we can do. I completely understand that and agree with that wholeheartedly. Let's turn that one around. If we agree that the biggest influence is going to be where we have physical contact, and we have in our interest that the other people do well because that's part of our community, that would be the incentive, correct? Following your analogy.
Yes.
So then the question is, and I don't think there is one answer, so don't feel bad. I was just very keen to get your opinion. And this is one that I struggle with myself. So how big can it be that we have the feeling that not only after, and I'm following your analogy, after we've built it, that it lasts? That's the key issue. And you mentioned that earlier in your talk, that you were so happy after you've gone to these factories, after things that you've done, and they were so happy to show you what they were still doing there. What is the key message from that of what you said? It lasted. What good is it if we build something if it doesn't last? I would consider that to be a waste. And so the question is, how big can it be before we can say that if it gets any bigger, it probably won't last? And if you don't have an answer, it's fine. I just wanted to ask you the question regardless.
I am following the example of nature, because nature is the evolution. It's here for very, very long time, and still it is developing. I think that the answer is not in a size generally. So we have dinosaurs, they die, but they did not die because they have been too big. They died because of some impact or something, but not because of the size generally. So I don't think that the size of our operation will kill it, if I say it so. I think it can stop or make a negative impact will be big, will be fast changes. So the people expect tomorrow it will be solved, and they will be disappointed. And many people have a change connected to amount of money. If I will have 1 million, it will change tomorrow. No. I even I put it online. I don't care how many numbers came. All this work I make only with my money generally, what I did in the last 7 years. No investors, nobody else. Only I get paid for the result. What can be negative generally will be if there will be big amount of money poured inside, and it will change the people mindset again from this I go for wasteless world into I go for more money. And if you look into the leadership of Forbes and all the others, they are listing people which have a lot of money as the best one, as the leaders. For me, that's not leadership. To have money, you can be successful, you can be lucky, you can be whatever. You are not a leader. You have only a lot of money. So I don't think it's a size. I think it can be this change of mindset which will put you in your comfort zone because you will have enough money. But enough money is never enough.
These are extrinsic motivators. Money is an extrinsic motivator in comparison to an intrinsic motivator like autonomy and mastery. Are you familiar with Elinor Ostrom and the idea about the commons? I think this is something that you would like. Elinor Ostrom won the Nobel Prize in Economics, first woman to win a Nobel Prize in Economics, and her theories were based upon this idea of the commons, or those things that we consider to be in the common good. And she came up with rules that would help you actually go ahead and make sure that it stays managed. And some of them we know already from society. For example, the idea that we establish governance, that we understand who does what are we trying to achieve, et cetera, and that you have rules. If indeed if certain individuals do not hold to the rules that we agreed upon, there is some punishment and has to be enforced. We know all this from a societal perspective. But the real question is, when you come up with rules that you and I agreed upon on our own, we didn't need a government to do this. We didn't need anybody else because we know what we need to live properly. And that could be very, very different for some other group. So who are we to say what their rules should be? The idea is that we establish our own rules. But the problem is, of course, the larger this gets, the less autonomy, or there's a chance of less autonomy, that people feel that they're part of the process, that they say that the freedom to be part of it, the responsibility that's tied to the freedom. I still think that there's some sort of physical constraint that we have, I don't know what it is, that allows for those things to happen. Let's stay on the path that you listed, tied to money and the allure of money. We know that if indeed somebody has different values and they are participating in some sort of public good, that they could possibly use it to their own advantage. We know that. And so the real key is, how do we come up with ways to make sure that we always stress the public good? And I think that's very important, tied to this wasteless world that you're talking about. But that means that we need to look at it not from just from a human being, not looking from a global perspective, but looking from a community perspective, what we define the community to be. It's not an easy endeavor. We don't have a choice. We need to come up with solutions along these ways. And so the question I have, and it's more of a rhetorical question because, Michael, I don't have an answer myself, is how big can it be? I tend to think, piggybacking on what you said, there is no standard answer. I think that in certain situations it could be larger. In certain cases it will be less small. I think that culture plays a very important role. I piggyback on something you said in the beginning of our conversation, tied to the Japanese. You cannot tell them that you do not know, because that would mean that you lose face and the status within that structure gets lost. That applies to all of us in various situations. You live in the Czech Republic. You're going to be working with certain norms that you're going to have to live with, because that's the way that people think in your society. You might find some similarities if you were to come here to Austria, and you're going to find differences. Can you imagine, for me, coming from the United States, living in a society where by nature I am always seeing things that people don't see, and it's the beautiful thing about being a migrant. I will probably always think, yeah, there will be a solution. I live in a society where it said we can't do anything about it. That's the nature of the society I live in. Of course, you and I know we can do something about it. But if people think they can't do anything about it, the real problem, and this is something that is more part of what I deal with, they cannot picture themselves after the change and how wonderful the world is. And I can go back to what you talked about earlier, how you go into the factories and show them why it's in their interests. For somebody who's high in the company, that works great. But what if for somebody who's afraid that they cannot make it happen? How do you deal with that? And I don't expect an answer from you, Michael, but I think these are the challenges that we're dealing with.
It's a very simple answer because it was already delivered. This is the trial. Let them try. This is the third R. Realize. Just take something what is in their hands, what is every day in front of their eyes, and show them and teach them how to transfer it in something very different.
Works great if you're in a society where you're allowed to make mistakes.
That's correct. But the part of the education is that mistake, it's a way to learn. I know, you know, but people shame for mistakes generally, and we have to teach them again. And this, it's a matter why next to you and me should sit some psychologists. I have an even workshop for psychologists, which was great last year. Should people sit there? This is why the group which is behind Industry 5.0 should be a group of experts from very various industries. And, you know, we will face exactly, because we will be the picture of society. Each of us will speak with different language, not meaning English, but meaning IT and psychologists and so on. And we have to learn first to speak together the right way, to understand each other. And this is exactly the image out of the society. And if we learn ourselves, before I hand over any project, I do it by myself. I will not be as skilled as the people there. Never, because I am not doing it 8 hours a day. But if I can do it, they can do it. And this is exactly what we have to find out. But by delivering the really touchable example, the people change. I have a great memory of one of a famous architect in Czech Republic. He lived in the US, came to this place which I am in. He is 80, educating on universities all over the world. And he opened the door and say, wow. And start to play with his image, with his everything. And that was the point. And I
agree.
But we have to find a way, and the psychologists can help us, or different people. I don't know who is responsible for that.
I think there is no one way to do it. The path and the objective are clear. And it's not to say that it's not doable. Of course, I'm going to say it's doable. Otherwise, I would just go ahead and hang myself. And that's not an option. What I'm trying to do is point out some of the difficulties that we have. Even when the boss says, you can make mistakes. If we live in a culture when you are not allowed to make mistakes, the real problem is they've been so conditioned not to make mistakes that they don't care about doing things right. The only thing they're interested in is not making the mistake. I don't know what it's like for you in the Czech Republic. I'm going to make some assumptions. You're probably not too dissimilar to Austria due to a common history and this idea of fear of failure, and that you're conditioned. This is a Central European mindset I run across quite often. I might be wrong here, and I'm hoping I am, because that means that I'm learning something as well. But here in Austria, if when you're a little child, you know you can do anything. Nobody's telling you can't. And then you start with the first grade, and then the conditioning starts. And you get to the point of where you don't ask, what can I do? What can be done? But rather, what do I need to do to survive? So this becomes part of your mindset. And to get past this one, of course, is not very easy. Liberation is the word I was looking for earlier. We want to liberate people, that they free themselves. They have to do it on their own. All we can do is show them the way.
And if I take the example of the Czech nationality, I work for an Austrian company, I work for a German company, Japanese company, so I have an experience in this. The Czechs and generally East Europeans, but the Czechs are very special in this. We will find every time a solution. Every time. The problem is that it's not systematic. I will do it this way. The next day I will do it another way. And the issues are somehow solved, but at the same time making more and more and more. And at the end, it's a hill, and it's too late. But if we combine Austrian or German or Japanese sharp approach, exact approach, and so on, with the Czech way, I call it Japanese way or German way. So if we call it with the Czech way, there will be established such an unbelievable strong environment. But the issue is, if there is a Japanese manager coming to Czech, he would like to make out of everybody Japanese people. And the Czech people will try to make out of him a Czech people. We are not accepting the difference. This was very strongly, you can feel it very strong, especially from a management point of view. It no sense. You will never do, even if you gave me your heart and I put it in my chest, it will not work. And I will never be you. And that's the point. But you mentioned it right. I think it's very important to find the right words, because if we would like to reach and change the whole world, everyone, we cannot do it with a physical example. I cannot send 7 billion packages all around the world, because I will create much more waste than it will deliver the result. But we can change them with the word. A Bible did it. I am not believer, so I am closer to Zen, but I do not believe. Something is there, that's all what I need to know. But if a book like Bible or Quran or anything else can change the global communities, the word can do it. We have to find the words. We have to find the words. This is the common language I spoke about, the words which everyone will understand. And as you mentioned, it's not money, because everyone said money solve everything. No. Yes, but for a short time, for a tiny moment, and then the problem will be there, an even bigger one. But we have to find the language. This is why I wrote the book. This is why I have to sit on the book and work with people who say, okay, this will be understood, this will not. Let's change this, let's modify this, let's put all the inputs. And that, I don't want to write a new Bible. No. I would like to write a book which child take and will understand, which his granny will take and will understand, which my mom will take, or my granddad, which is 96 years old, and we still speak about similar topics as we discuss here. We speak and discuss because he spent 75 years in teaching others, and he's 96 at the moment. So that's the book which has to be written to be understood. And thanks to digital world, it can be delivered in digital form right now all over the world. Just in touch of one button. But we have to write it first. Big part is done, but a lot of work is waiting for those people who will work on it, who will help us to deliver to the world, to transfer it into digital. Of course, it's in word written, so not transfer it, but make it in the understandable way and shareable way, accessible to everyone. And it's important that everyone knows that reading these words and this book will be the benefit for him, will deliver the benefits he is looking for. And this is what we have to do.
Wonderful words. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm afraid I'm going to have to close this one for today. What I plan to do is go through the material. I might come back to you and ask for some additional questions, but what I will do is I will make a whole show out of our conversations. And what I want to do is make it a call to action for people to want to participate, because that was clearly your last words, and I would like to assist in that process. In addition to that, I think there are some of my ideas that I'd like to go ahead and share with you as well. You mentioned, and I think that we're running across a number of commonalities. You talk about looking under the carpet. There's a phrase that I use. I said, thinking in the box. What does that mean? Thinking in the box means this is all you have. So don't try to look for something you don't have. Look at the things that you have. And that's truly a mindset. And I tend to think when you talk about looking under the carpet, we're talking about the same thing. So I thought that was really great. I think this idea of frugal innovation that I've been working on for a long time, I'd like to go ahead and share some of those ideas with you. And I'd be really keen to, I'm sure that you're already doing these things. So if I can take some of these concepts and come up with live examples based upon those things that you're doing, because you're performing frugal innovation to me. I'm firmly convinced. And if you asked the question about synergy, if we could try to see how we can combine some of these things, I think it'd be fantastic. So if I understood you correctly, you're located in Pilsen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you're not that far. You're a neighbor. So that's what I'm already thinking of. I passed through the Czech Republic to go to Berlin. I took a bus to be at the Cradle to Cradle conference last January. And I've been to Pilsen before. It's not that far away. And so what I would like to do in comparison to a lot of different countries, you're close enough that I can come to visit. So I'd like to do that sometime if that would be okay with you.
For sure, you will be welcome all the time. And from my point of view, if you think that our discussion, our work, and so on, it's really fitting in what you are teaching. Let's have a lesson for your students. Let's have such a mission, such a discussion. As you said, it's not so far. So we can have it. We can have 2 lessons. We can even go to factories which are in Austria. I spoke last year with several Austrian companies as well, with governments in some of the regions. They like the ideas, but they are politicians and it took too much time. Yeah. Yes, so you will be every time welcome. We just have to agree on a time because I spend 4 of 7 working days of my week I spend in factories. Mm-hmm.
And maybe a combination to see how you're doing things, and if that would be okay with you, I would very much enjoy that.
And I can even take you to one of the factories and you can help me to load a truck with a coil. So we will agree on it.
Okay, fantastic. And then I think the last question would be, let's see how I can get a copy of the file. I think it works because you sent me something and I clicked on the button and it called up VLC, which is the audio program. So I think it might work, but I might have to reach out to you to have you send me something again. But I think we're getting very close.
Let's see, we have 1 hour, 37 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is great, but as I know that if you come to Pilsen, one day will not be enough. And say for me, then I will try it. I will send it. Let's work together and let this great discussion be the start of a long-term cooperation.
I would enjoy that very much, Michael. Thank you very much for your time.
And I wish you what I wish to everyone. I wish you your days be free of waste and wasting in all of its forms.
I think, you know what, I'm going to take that. I'm going to put that as one of the mottos for my show.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks again, Michael. You take care.
Say bye-bye.
Ciao.